Do you feel like you have enough time to do all the things you want to do in life? All the things you're expected to do in life? If the answer is no, you are not alone. So many of us struggle to find all the time we feel we need for the people that we love, and for work, and for taking care of ourselves, and for faith, and for playing games. But what if time management is a battle we can never truly win? And what if the answer is not to fight against our limits at all, but to embrace them, to celebrate them? Today we're considering a book that asks these questions and more. 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman is a revelation of a book with profound implications for how we live, love, work, believe, and even play games. All on this episode of Board Game Faith, the bi-weekly show exploring the intersection of religion, spirituality, and board games. Hello and welcome to Board Game Faith, everyone. It is great to have you here. My name is Daniel Hilty.
And my name is Kevin Taylor.
And we want to say a word of thanks to all of you who are listening today on the podcast or watching on YouTube. We are really grateful for you and really appreciate you spending some time with us. Thank you so much. Kevin, I was thinking as we were dancing during our theme song, only our YouTube viewers get to view our dancing. They may not even see our dancing. I don't know.
No, they don't, because I dropped the video in there.
That's probably for the best.
It's for the best.
You're a
Some
good dancer.
things cannot be unseen.
But no,
I'm an excellent dancer.
You are.
Yep.
You're famous for that. No, that's true.
No, I'm not.
It's true.
Stop lying. It's Lent. Daniel, don't lie during Lent.
It is Lent. In the Christian tradition, it's Lent. For those of
and Lent
you,
means what, Daniel? It means Daniel.
So I gave you this book,
Anglo-Saxon Norse.
but I said it was just to borrow it. I lent it to you, and I never got it back. It refers to the 6 weeks before Good Friday and Easter, Christ's crucifixion and resurrection. It's traditionally a season of kind of spiritually getting ready for that. I believe, you might know this better than I do, but I believe it relates to the same word that gives us lengthen. Like it refers to the lengthening of the days.
I didn't know that.
Of sunlight, something like that.
I didn't know that. It's Anglo-Saxon for spring, but it may be also related to lengthen. Yeah, the days are lengthening.
I didn't know it was Anglo-Saxon for spring. Cool.
So, English is weird because we have Latin, we have German, we have French, and we have Anglo-Saxon, which is why we have the words poultry and chicken, because poultry is French and chicken is Anglo-Saxon.
I didn't know that.
So we have multiple words sometimes for the same thing. It's because we have all these, we're such a hodgepodge. Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? So chicken has that almost guttural, you could hear a Viking going, chicken, Odin's son, chicken.
And I think our word hen relates to the German word for chicken.
Does it?
I think so. I think. Interesting. But I didn't know that about chicken. Chicken does sound very, very guttural. Yeah.
Because the word Mister, I assume, comes from the German Meister, right? Mm-hmm. And hamburger comes from hamburger. So, it's an odd language.
Yeah.
I pity those that must learn it.
It's got to be a tough language to learn.
It's got to be terrible.
Yeah. Well, as the start of Lent in the Christian tradition in Christian circles, and you might be in that circle, listener or viewer, or you might not be, and either way is okay. You are welcome here.
Either way, we wish you a happy Lent.
That's right. That's right. We are an ecumenical and open podcast. We're glad you're
here.
here.
And Lent is usually not a time of happiness, so that's partly why I'm saying that tongue-in-cheek,
No, that's probably, we shouldn't develop a Lenten dance or something, but
correct.
But we start off with Ash Wednesday, and I wanted to tell you, in our church at least, we start off Lent with Ash Wednesday. A lot of churches do. It's this day where you remember your mortality, right? Which is kind of what we're talking about today.
Or your sin. It could be focused on sin and repentance or death.
Right, right. And
Two
traditionally,
themes there.
you receive a mark of the cross and ashes on your forehead. And so I kind of got a little chuckle, though, this past Ash Wednesday. Kevin, another pastor at our church is Pastor Jewel, and she's really great. She's awesome. Pastor Amy is also wonderful at the church. But Jewel and I were leading the Ash Wednesday service, and so I was marking the cross in ash on about half of the congregation as they came forward, and Pastor Jewel was doing it on the other half of the congregation as they came forward. And after that, the markings, everyone's sitting down, and of course we're facing the congregation, and it was so obvious. It was so obvious which crosses Jewel had made and which crosses I had made, because Jewel's were like these super neat little like 90-degree angle crosses. Oh, she's an artist, and so they looked like crosses. Yeah. And the other half, it was like a big black smudge, just like like a smudge all over their forehead. In fact, I had someone give me grief afterwards. She came up to me and she said, "You really need to up your cross game," because she kind of wished she had been in Pastor Jewel's line, because. So next year I'm using a stencil.
The sheep and the goats were already evident who was in which group.
That's right. That's right. So
Actually,
anyway,
you remind me, I have a funny Lent story.
Oh, I want to hear it.
This was years ago, but we had a cat that hung around the church and came in the office sometime. We call him CC, church cat. Well, we had a Maundy Thursday service, and there's different ways of doing a Maundy Thursday service, but the one that we had, there was a large cross and you had a nail, and you would go out single file, and each person would put a nail in these pre-drilled holes, and sort of symbolizing that you're nailing your sins to the cross. So it's ultimately supposed to be a good thing, even though it's a little maybe somber. But it was taking forever. Like the line was taking forever, and we're like, "What is going on?" And we finally looked around, and Cece, the church cat, was right in front of the cross. So people would put their nail in the cross and then pet the cat and walk away. So it was like tripling the time, because the cat was just there, completely oblivious to our Lord's sufferings. And that's why animals are wonderful.
They are.
Like, you have a somber service. I will totally jeopardize the somberness here.
That's so great.
So nail, pet the cat. Nail, pet the cat. She just sat there, kind of mangy.
That's such a great illustration of something we talk about in our family too, which is like just pets' unapologetic obliviousness to the reality that they're not the center of everything, right? Just that they're just like the cat. Here's the cat in a Monday Thursday service, and the cat thinks, clearly this is all about me.
Right.
Clearly everyone is coming forward to pet me.
Exactly.
That's great.
I am the savior of the universe. Yes.
I love that story.
Ooh,
church cat.
Daniel.
Yeah.
I just felt a small segue bell ring.
Oh, tell me.
Because Daniel.
Yes,
okay,
run with it.
It's almost as if animals don't have a sense of time.
Ooh.
Right? Like you have somewhere to be, and it's clearly, everyone knows the banks close at 5:00, and you've got to go in physically to the bank, which still happens occasionally, and it's 4:50 p.m. and you only have 10 minutes.
Yes.
And the dog wants, some attention.
Yes.
It's as if the dog doesn't operate on the times of Western industrial society.
Cats and animals and dogs do not value time. They do not value time. And I have to say, Kevin, that is a great segue, and I can't resist. It reminds me, though, of one of my dad's favorite jokes. May I share this about animals and time? Yeah. So it's just a joke. It may not be funny. I haven't told it in 30 years, so I don't know if it's even funny anymore. But according to this,
like a premiere. It says the premiere of Daniel's joke.
I mean, it'll be over before you know it. It's not very. It'll go fast.
Okay.
But my dad loved to tell a story about a person who was driving down the road through the country, and they came across a farmer who was straining to hold up a pig to an apple tree so that the pig could eat an apple off the apple tree. Have you heard this?
Okay. No, but I like it already.
And obviously,
I know
the
jokes
farmer
about
is
people
really
driving and seeing pigs.
Yes,
so
yes. So
I always like this genre.
Is straining to hold this pig up to an apple tree to eat the apple. And the person rolled out the window and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And the farmer said, "I'm holding up this pig so that it can eat the apple off the apple tree."
Of course.
And the person in the car says, "Well, doesn't that take a lot of time?" And the farmer says, what is time to a pig? So there you go.
That's so funny.
So that's
What is
in
time
memory
to
of my
a thing?
dad. But so yeah, animals don't have a good sense of time, right? They're fine
No,
with you
no.
spending all afternoon holding them up so they can eat apples off of a tree. But why would that be a problem to us as human beings?
Well, it's a problem to us because, of course, what we're doing is super important. And if we just get these things done, then we will finally be able to rest and be happy. And so we just need to
Hmm.
get our to-do lists and our ducks in a row, and then we can go on vacation or we can retire, and all of a sudden everything will change and we'll never feel like we have anything to do again.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's why
Yep.
animals are difficult. Because
Yep.
humans must be
Yep.
right, correct?
You know, we certainly have not shown any error in judgment over human
Right.
history.
Oppenheimer, anyone?
No, and that statement, what you just said, this idea, this belief that if we just manage our time better, if we just get things done, if we just get things on the list, then we will finally be happy, then things will finally be good, is the central, dare I say, conceit? The central conceit that this book, 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals by Oliver Burkeman, seeks to kind of explode, right? Or seeks
Yeah.
to kind of poke at. And so, yeah, so we're discussing this book today. It's Board Game Faith Book Club. 4,000 Weeks. Those of you who are viewers on
And
YouTube
and
can
this,
see it.
yep. I have the audiobook, so I can only show you. If I printed out the receipt, I could show that to you. But I will say this has nothing to do with games at all, correct? Or does it? Dun,
Or
dun,
does
dun.
it?
Because
Dun, dun,
Senor
dun.
Burkeman, we shall call him,
Yeah.
he does not talk about games at all in this book. But you and I both had Segway bells ringing in our heads.
Yeah, yeah. I think he gets to game adjacent in it, especially one section.
He's game
that
curious.
spoiler alert, involves Rod Stewart. But we'll get to that in a second. Yeah. So, but yeah, so this 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals, Oliver Burkeman. Where does the title come from, Kevin, for those of our viewers or listeners who may be wondering?
So interesting because he says if you ask people how many weeks comprise the normal average lifespan of a human being, people give all sorts of crazy numbers.
Yeah.
40,000, 400,000. Our sense of time is so wrong. It's 4,000 weeks is, I think, an 80-year lifespan. 80
Yeah.
times
And some change.
52.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's sort of rounding. And of course, some people get more and some get less. But that's roughly what you have in your lifetime. And the question is, how will you manage it? And what sort of life do you want to live? And does your relationship of time make that 4,000 weeks brighter and better or worser?
Right. Yeah.
Which is why he calls it Time Management for Mortals. Because
Yeah.
this is a book about mortality. So it is a good Lenten study.
Yeah.
So you had commented that it came to him as a conversion moment that he tells in the book. What was
Yeah,
that?
that's what really sucked me in this book. Near the beginning, I got it because I was thinking, oh, I really need to manage my time better, and what
Right.
so I just searched like, what's a good time management book, and he talks about this conversion moment. He doesn't describe it as conversion moment, but I do. Near the beginning of the book, apparently, Oliver Burkeman has made quite a career for himself being kind of what he himself calls like a productivity nerd, right? Or a productivity geek. Like he writes about how to be more productive, more efficient, how to manage things better. Like this is what he does. He writes books on it and writes articles for newspapers. And he talks about this moment not too long ago, sitting on a bench in Brooklyn, I believe, when all of a sudden it hit him that none of it actually works.
The one thing they don't want you to know.
Yeah, that none of it actually works. That it kind of in his phrase, like the more we try to master time, the more time will master us.
Right.
That we're never going to find a magic formula that makes us feel like we can get all of our to-do lists done. That we're going to get everything. That we'll finally get to that promised land over the hill where we got everything done, and everything is great, and we can finally just be happy. It's a lie, right? It's kind of an illusion. And that's how he begins the book. it's a
Yeah, it's
great beginning.
powerful. And I totally identify with him because I have used different productivity systems. I kind of enjoy doing it. And I think
Yeah,
others do
yeah,
too. You like exploring them and testing them. It's almost like trying out a new board game. And so
yeah,
I've bought different apps and things. So I totally got
yep,
where he's coming
yeah. Me
from.
too.
And I had never thought of the fact that, as he says, if you are more productive, all that it means is that you work more
Hmm.
because it never ends. Like
Hmm.
the better you are at email, the more you respond to email, the more responsive you are, the more people email you.
Yep,
And the
yep.
more you end up creating, and you get yourself in a state of anxiety of always getting stuff done and you can't enjoy anything.
Right,
And
right,
so he's actually saying it's fool's gold, really. It looks like
right.
gold, but it's
Yeah,
actually fake. It's just silicon.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Silicon. Yeah,
Yeah. So he's not saying we shouldn't be efficient or we shouldn't try to do things well or correctly, but he's kind of what we'll say. He also says you have to have a sense of failure throughout all of
yeah,
it, which I totally love. And I think
yeah,
he's
yeah,
absolutely right. I think he's
yeah,
absolutely right. I mean, if he's wrong, show me the money. Show me. 'Cause I don't see how he's wrong.
no,
But
no.
anyway, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so he begins right. Just I was just agreeing with you. Yeah, kind of embracing the things that we so often spend our lives trying to fight against or to pretend isn't there. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, so he begins by talking about time, right? Even our relationship with time.
Yeah.
And what struck you with some of his conversation about time?
Well, I love that he gets into how artificial time is today, that it's
Hmm.
really a
Hmm.
product of modern capitalism and
Hmm.
commerce. And some of those are wonderful things. Like the planes need, the reason our clocks are synchronized, as I had read it, I don't know if he mentions this, is the train system. That
Right.
at a point in the 1800s, the trains everyone had local time. So they had to have multiple clocks in each train station and train to tell you, because it may be at 9:05 in Boston is actually 8:53 in New York. They're same time zone, but
Right.
they counted time a little differently. And there was one day where they actually synchronized all the clocks
That's
so that
wild.
they could fix that problem. So
Yeah.
now it's even more awesome that with cell phones, we have perfectly synced time. We don't even have to even, because I remember having to set your digital or analog clock occasionally, right? They would get
Yeah.
off.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that seems great, but it's very oppressive because we're measuring everything in units of time. Our
Yeah.
work, our effectiveness, how we spend our time, we're always measuring. And yeah, it really struck me that in the Middle Ages, people measured time by how long it took to urinate. Is that not
Really?
crazy? Or how long it took? Yeah, he mentions that. Or
I missed that.
they call it a miseria, how long it takes to say Psalm 51.
To say it's interesting. Interesting.
Because
Yeah.
they didn't have
Yeah.
clocks. And you might have had a town clock that rang a bell on the hour, but what was time? What was 5 minutes? They had no concept of it. So they
Right.
measured it
Right.
by in sort of vague notions of how they lived.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, and they were not oppressed by the clock as these poor Uber drivers are, or something like that, or delivery drivers.
Yeah, I love his discussion of the kind of medieval concept of time, and he's quick to say, there are many good things about not being in the Middle Ages. So he wasn't saying let's
Yes.
return to
Yeah.
medieval times,
We're
but he's
not
just saying but the concept of time was so different. The sun went down, it was time to stop working. The sun
right.
comes up, it's time to start. It's time to start working.
Yeah, there was
and
no work at night because it was pitch
right,
black.
yeah, yeah,
So you went inside and maybe you could read, or maybe not, or maybe lit some candles and played some music, and then you went to bed.
yeah,
And when
yeah,
the sun came up, you got up.
yeah, yeah. And you're right. How differently we perceive time now. I think you maybe have in the notes, and I think you mentioned this as well. He didn't originate it, but he was quoting some philosopher who talks about how we moderns view time as boxes on a conveyor belt, right? And like
Right.
this endless conveyor belt sends us like 1 hour blocks, and we have to fill in the blocks as much as we can, cram as much as we, and then it's going to go down the conveyor belt, and here comes the next hour block, and we have to cram in as much as we can. Time for that, and if we don't,
So
then we
crazy.
feel guilty, right? I could have filled in this block more, and it's
You know what drives me crazy is calendar apps always assume something's an hour, and you'll see it with people. And so that means if there's only 20 minutes that's really needed for the meeting, people show up late, they complain about how busy they are. the stuff that needs to be addressed is addressed, and then people talk about how busy they are, and then it takes an hour, and you're like, well, why did we spend 40 minutes? And partly people aren't paying attention because they're on their phones. And you're like, well, if we're all so busy, why do we just assume this has to be an hour? Why couldn't it be 20 minutes or what about 18 or 53? But we don't like that. We like nice round numbers. So we think of it as an hour and we divide the day up, but the sun and the day cares nothing for our little hourly mile mark. Like a mile marker itself is arbitrary, or a click or kilometer. All these things are arbitrary constants that then crush us. It's so weird.
You know what's not arbitrary?
What?
The metric system.
Did you know the metric system is actually in the Bible and the Quran and the Bhagavad Gita? It's amazing. It's all...
That's great. That's great.
It's a foundational theological belief.
Yeah.
Kilometer.
Give us base 10. Anyway, yes.
1000110011101.
And so he, I think he really sees that as as kind of the core of the problem, in that we see modern life as a battle with time, right?
Yes.
And it's a battle ultimately we will lose. That we can't, if we're trying to battle time, we'll always lose it. It will always get the best of us.
Because what are we? We ultimately
Methodists.
are.
No, that's right. Sorry. We're mortal.
Want to be
mortal.
Catholics. We wish
That's
we were
right.
Catholics.
Sorry.
No, we are
Mortal.
time itself. Like, that's the tough. We're mortal, but also we are actually creatures of time. And to battle time is to actually battle ourselves in a way that is oppressive. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, who did he quote? Heidegger? Heidegger said that, or something that,
Yeah, maybe you want to read Heidegger.
Yeah.
I know of him. I think I can spell his name. I've never actually read him, but yeah, that we are in a sense, all we are is what we have paid attention to, or what we've paid attention to through time. That's the sum of our identity.
Right.
And so to battle that is to deny how God created us, which is, God must love history because God made it, and God made time.
Right.
And we're traveling through it, and we need to embrace it for what it is instead of trying to make it something it's not.
So when if we see life as kind of a battle with time, we're battling ourselves, right? And we're just kind of
we're battling
doing
our very
violence and harm.
humanity.
Yeah.
So AI and stuff, it would be so, or aliens may have a very different understanding, and that would be so cool, or presumably angels. But for us, we are time bound.
Yeah. So one way, so then he explores, these ways that I think you might say, kind of failed attempts or flawed attempts to relate to time. And one of them that we've already mentioned, is efficiency, right? That we try to be so efficient. And I think, as you said, he's saying, he's not saying we shouldn't be efficient, to try to, but I think he also tries to lift up some dangers we can get into, right? When efficiency is kind of our God.
Right. It is an idolatry. I thought of that a lot in this book as idolatry.
Yeah.
If efficiency is our God, then you're never going to be happy. You're always going to be trying to optimize, and you're always going to be restless. And if you spend a lifetime trying to get to a moment, such as the dream vacation or retirement, well, surprise, sucker, you're not going to be able to enjoy it because you're so twisted towards efficiency. You're going to be sitting on that pool deck twiddling your thumbs like, I got to do something.
Yes.
You are what you do, right?
Exactly. If
you're unable to relax.
Yep. I one of the biggest revelations of this book for me was this idea that of the instrumentalization of time, of time. And our whole modern society is built on this. We might say capitalism is built on this. Maybe you talk about the Protestant work ethic is built on this, but this instrumentalization of time, that our economic system, our modern society instrumentalizes everything and everyone, including me, I'm to some extent I'm a cog in a machine, that's trying to produce something. We're all kind of cogs machine. But he says we do this even for time, right? And so that,
Right.
because, so what does that mean? Examples. Well, we have to do really good in school and get good grades. Why? So that we can get into college and get into a good college or whatever. You get to college. Well, I have to do really good in college. Why? So that I can get a good job. All right, so that I get to the job. I have to work really hard at my job. Why? So that I can get a promotion, right? Well, I get a promotion. So why do I do that? So that, and it keeps going on and on and on,
Right.
so that everything you're doing in the present is in service to some future moment, right? And it sets up this dynamic you mentioned there at the beginning, that someday I'll be happy, right? Someday I'll make it there. Someday everything will be great. But right now, I've got to work. I've got to instrumentalize my time. I have to have this be in service to the future, so that when the future gets here, I'll finally be happy. But the problem is, it's never the future,
Right.
The future is a mental construct. The only thing we ever have is the present. And if our present moments are always in service to the future, we will never be happy, right? We will never be satisfied and content.
And the Apostle Paul has this, I think it's in 1 Corinthians, he says, now is the day of salvation, kind of saying that. It gets picked up later by St. Augustine. We say tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, but tomorrow never comes. Because, as you're saying, like in a weird way, the future never exists. And so what we do is we rob the present of any of its joys, because it's always being made, it's a mule being made to service the future.
Right.
And it's so profound and true, and it's obvious, but we don't think about it, or we've been so trapped by the measurement of time, of clocking in and out. And I've long struggled with this with ministry, that some people really think churches ought to be like banks that are 9 to 5 type thing. And that's, when you think about it, it's a very odd concept.
Yeah.
Why do we think they should work like a bank is there for certain services, but churches don't typically work that way.
Right.
Like people don't walk in wanting to withdraw cash. They might walk in if there's a problem or issue, but church is also about visiting nursing homes and
Exactly.
Like things happen outside the church. So for some reason in the 20th century, people began to think of them as if they were local businesses, but they would operate very differently if that were true.
Right. Yeah. The church is a strange animal.
Right. Well, I think it's more cultural than church, but
right. True.
But it has definitely been in church in the 20th and 21st century has been a strange animal. Because of these influences. So he makes the great point, and I've long thought of this, that people are so impatient with microwave ovens, which are so fast, that they actually open the door before it goes off. So you are more impatient with a 20-second microwave experience than you would be if you were, say, growing tomatoes or something else, right? Like it's all about expectations. And if you expect it to be fast, you're frustrated that it wasn't ready already.
Right. He makes that point, that you would think that becoming more efficient with things, time-saving things, would allow us to be more relaxed. I mean, that was the promise, right? Of every efficiency.
That was the promise.
Every efficiency, we'd be more relaxed. But it doesn't. It just makes us more impatient. You're right. And I love that example you said. He says, how many times have you walked into your office kitchen, wherever you work, if you work in a place with an office kitchen, and there's always like 6 or 7 seconds left on the microwave? And it's because somebody before you couldn't wait the final 6 or 7 seconds.
Yes.
And I do that too. I do it too.
I have a electric kettle, and it's a cool one in some ways, but it doesn't beep when it's ready, or it does a subtle one, but then immediately starts cooling. So you really kind of have to stand there with it, almost babysit it.
Oh yeah.
Because you can't go do something else and wait for it to beep, because you won't hear it.
Okay.
But why not? Like, why don't I just stand there and just enjoy because it only takes like 40 seconds. It's not long. But I'm tempted to multitask.
Right. Pull out the phone, answer some email. At least that's what I would do.
Yeah, tidy up something or whatever.
Yeah. It's interesting. So much of this touches on spiritual matters. I mean, you just a moment ago, quoted St. Paul and
Mm-hmm.
Augustine. Oliver Burkeman really draws extensively from a lot of spiritual traditions in this book.
He
He also
does. He
quotes a
does.
lot of Christian tradition and Jewish tradition and Buddhism and other traditions as well. And I said in the intro what a revelation this book was, at least kind of for me. But it really it really wasn't that way. I thought I was getting a book on how to answer more emails more efficiently, and it's more
Mm-hmm.
like it's about like the meaning of life.
It
It's like about
is. It
it's
is.
so it's so it's really good. It's really good. We're
Yeah,
not
and I
being
like
paid
how
by
he
Oliver Berkman
quotes.
to say this. Yeah.
No, no, but I'm sure he's listening to this podcast because I think he gets
Thank
this because
you,
we get
Mr.
him.
Berkman.
I like how he also quotes the religious traditions that he's not sort of chumming up to them. He's not out to score points for or against. He's just like, hey, religions agree with this, and here's where they've agreed with it. And then he moves on. So he's
Yeah,
very
yeah,
authentic in how he draws from them without
yeah.
any chip on his shoulder, either trying to prove or disprove.
Right,
He doesn't,
right.
he's never snarky. He's very appreciative.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I like that. I really like that. Yeah.
yeah.
And I love the one. I love the one so much about the Hindu guru who said, "Do you want to know my secret?
Oh
I
yes.
don't mind what happens next," which is, I assume, an intentional pun, both that he's not worrying about it, but also he's not going to let it sit in his mind. So there's a bit of a
Yeah,
pun there about the mind. But the
yeah,
secret of enjoying the present is deciding that you won't really mind what happens next.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That was so
So
good.
good. I loved it.
Related to that is something else he said that really stuck with me that I've been trying to practice and embrace, but not doing a very good job at it. But also he said one of the keys to he didn't quite put it this way, but something to the effect of one of the keys to having peace of mind is to let go of your demand that the future conform to your expectations. And that was so good. I was so good.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because I know that is how much stress and anxiety, and also just to be real, as a person of faith, prayer, do I
Hmm.
spend all the time trying to get the future to conform to my desires, right?
Right.
And there's something so liberating about that's not my job. I I,
Right.
I really don't have. I can't. Nor can it be my job. I cannot demand that the future conform to what I want it for it to be. That
No, a
doesn't mean we can't
proper
make plans.
relationship is curiosity,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is an antidote to anxiety, is to approach things with curiosity. So you're
yeah.
open and you're interested, but you're not trying to control it.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And it's so hard if you're of an anxious bent, which I am.
Yep. Me too.
But life is so much more rewarding when you allow it to surprise you instead of trying to make it be what you want to be.
Yeah. He talks about developing a taste for problems and expect problems and kind of curiosity, like you said, of problems. He said,
Yeah.
he says he feels like we're going through many of us go through life with this unspoken assumption that like problems should never happen, and if they do, it's like a great injustice. And
Right.
it's like
It's so
that's just
true.
not true. It's like
It's so
problems are going to happen, so expect them, and
right.
become like a connoisseur of problems. Like find some, expect them, and try to, as much as you can, see them as challenges to overcome. Or be
Yeah,
curious
and
about
that
them.
they're
Yeah,
always going to be there. You will never
right.
not have challenges. When you're older,
Yeah,
you're going to have health challenges. You're going to have be worried about family and friends. Life is a series of challenges, and it is odd. I don't know if it's consumerism that we just
mm.
kind of expect that we will be happy, like we expect that you can walk in a store and buy exactly what you want and not have to wait or be
Yeah,
inconvenienced or have anyone in your way. You can get the color you want, and if you don't, you can complain or ask if there's some in the back, right? They always
right.
think there's a solution. They promise solutions. And
Yeah,
so we
yeah,
get so used to that, we think it applies to everything, but no, no.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I,
there's
I
always
know
challenges.
we had talked. I know you had a section about kind of the second major part of this is thinking about how it relates to rest and play and games. But before I get to that, do you mind if I just bring up also, he has this great section where he talks about the joy of settling.
Yes.
and the joy of missing out. Did that connect to you too, or
Absolutely.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
when I taught at Pfeiffer with some of the students, I felt that easy push that they are given, which is, what do you want to major in? Right? What do you want
hmm
to be when you grow up? And I'm thinking, these are 18, 19-year-olds. How dare we ask them that? And if you ask
exactly,
most
yeah,
adults, they aren't doing what they thought they were doing. They're 18. That's ridiculous. You
right,
can ask them
right,
what they like and encourage them to do that, but they should pursue their interests, and they should settle, and they should network. But they
hmm
do, I mean, gosh, to set them up for that kind of failure,
yeah,
to say,
yeah,
well, here's what you're going to be, and just your major, and oh, well, you messed up because you chose the wrong major. Well, how are you supposed to know? Your
yeah,
brain's
yeah,
still 8 years out from final formation. Like
absolutely,
you're saying about the future, they should enjoy being a student and learning,
right, right,
right? And enjoy the present. They should prepare for the future, but college is not about getting a job. College is about college.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great connection with the college student experience. I didn't think about that, but you're right. That is
Well, it's been mine, so I immediately connected. Like, I know what he's getting, or that's how I would connect it with it, because I was like, yeah, I saw this, and I never wanted to ask them, what do you want to major in? That's just,
right,
or what do you want to do with the rest of your life? You're like, I want to
right,
rock. Remember,
right.
was it Twisted Sister? What do you want to do for the rest of your life? I want to rock. I mean, that was a great
Yeah.
answer. Like, that's about it. And at 18, that's okay. You go
Yeah,
rock, buddy.
yeah,
What were
yeah.
your thoughts on it, about
Well,
the
I guess
settling topic?
I was just thinking about it in terms of, there's kind of this inclination, either, I don't know whether it's intrinsic to the human heart or whether we're taught it from our culture, but to, always kind of keep your options open, always, never commit to one thing, because then once you're committed, then you're saying no to other options, right? What once you commit to one road, you're closing down other
Hmm.
roads. And so you don't want to commit so that you can go down as many, you can have that option in the future of going down a different road. But he said the problem with that is, that there's a certain joy and blessing, to use a religious word, that comes with the depth of choosing a road and sticking on it,
Right.
that you can't get if you're just always trying to keep your options open, and you won't get it initially either. I guess a couple things come to my mind. I guess from my own experience, they say some of the most productive work for a pastor in a church is like between years 5 and 7.
Hmm.
And I have found that to be true. That it just takes years of getting to know each other as a church and as a pastor, and getting to care for each other
Hmm.
and learning you can trust each other. And if you come in there and instantly think, okay, we're gonna do all these things. Sometimes it can be not too good, the results of that, because you've skipped over the period of just living life together, where that nurtures a kind
Right.
of depth to that relationship that you can't hurry. It just takes, there's no substitute for time and building. And the other thing what makes you think about is
So
like marriage,
good.
is like a marriage, like a good marriage, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, I'm not to get too gushy or sentimental, but I'm so thankful for Kristen, and I just adore her. And and we married a long time, and like every couple, we've talked about this. She doesn't mind me sharing it. We have arguments at times. We don't get along, things like that. Uh, but the blessing of those times is you come out on the other side, and you learn that you can go through arguments and disagreements and still have the other person love you, right? And still care about
Right.
each other. And you don't know that if if you are always keeping your options open, right? Because if you're always keeping your options open, then when that first argument comes, then you go in a different direction or something like that, right?
Right.
Because you want to explore another option. Anyway, that's kind of what
Yeah,
made
or
me
you
think
keep
about.
waiting
Yeah.
to meet the perfect person, and they
Right.
explore this sometimes in movies. I think that sometimes a perfect person is right there, but they just don't see them, because they're like, well, I
Yeah.
want this. I want somebody that was on The Bachelor, and I want this, so they spend years waiting or trying to find the perfect person, and they could have had a lot of happiness before then.
Yeah.
It also reminds me of that old joke I'm sure everybody knows about the guy that's, there's a flood and he goes up on the roof of his house and prays that God will send him a miracle, right? And
Yes.
so a rowboat comes by and he's like, can we help you? Like, no, God's going to give me a miracle. And then I forget it. Helicopter comes by and then
Yep.
something else. Do you remember? There's always three. I forget the third. I mean,
I don't remember either.
So he dies, which is,
Yeah.
then that's the end of the joke. No. He dies and he goes to heaven. He's like, I prayed for a miracle. God, where were you? And God's like, well, I sent you a rowboat and a helicopter. And he kept waiting for the perfect miracle, but there they were, and it wasn't good enough. So I think, the idea of just committing to smaller steps is humans were scared of big projects. We're scared of big things. So one answer to that is to simply focus on the next step.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to be a musician, you should start listening to music, and you should try to play it, and you should sing. Well, I don't have a perfect music teacher. Well, maybe you just start singing in the church choir or the temple choir or the school choir. Well, I don't like that teacher. Well, who cares? You're learning.
Right.
You settle.
Yeah.
Take what's before you, not what you think you should have.
Right. Oh, that's so good. That's so good.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah, I think one of his last chapters is called like do the next right thing or something like that, or the next right step or something like that.
And it's so true, because people are so overwhelmed, and so you break down a project into smaller steps, and you work on what you can do.
Yeah.
You don't write a book; you write one word at a time. But if you write one word at a time for a while, you will have a book. Yeah. It's not magic; it's just. It seems magical because we only see the final production. You didn't see Stephen King actually typing out words, 3,000 words a day, every day. In 6 months, he's got a book. You don't see that. You just see a book on the shelf, and you're like, wow, you must be really smart and really good at that. But or like you say about building a house, you don't build a house. You build what is your thing?
Oh, the frame, like the studs and the framing. Yeah. But you don't think about the framing at all.
No.
So what does this have to do with games?
Oh, so much, Daniel. I think first off, the idea, it's funny. Sometimes we don't play games because we feel like we don't have enough time.
Yes.
And that may be true. There may be a season of your life where you really can't, because let's say you have a young infant in the house or job change or you're moving or something. But in general, maybe you do have the time. You just think you don't because you're trying to get all this stuff done. And you keep waiting to have the perfect time for the perfect game group. But maybe you need to retool those expectations. Maybe the point of games is not to play them when you're done, but to play them because you only have 4,000 weeks.
Yeah.
And if you want to be playing games, what's stopping you?
Right. There will always be something else that seems to make itself, that society will say is more important than play.
Yes.
For us, it takes the form of games, but play can take other forms as well.
Right.
And you need, if thinking that you have to get through all the important stuff is the measure for whether you play games or not, you're never going to play games. You're never going to play, right? Because society will always say there's something more important. And so it makes that decision to say, this is an important part of human existence. What it means to be human. And I feel like such a hypocrite for saying that. I true confession time. I have recently dropped out of our game group at church because I just feel like I didn't have the time for it anymore.
No,
I feel like such a hypocrite. I know,
Daniel, you're going to go to hell. No, Daniel, no.
Our wonderful college ministry director Reeves has taken over it, and she does great. Yeah. But I just felt like I've got like meetings every other night, and it was like, I just can't. You
can't. Maybe you can't for now, but the goal should be, hopefully, that will change. I hope. Yeah, and also, it also reminds me. It's what Rodney at Watch It Played. Rodney Dangerfield, is that his name?
Smith.
Rodney Dangerfield.
Rodney Dangerfield can't get no respect, but Rodney Smith, everyone.
Rodney
respects.
Smith does, but Rodney Smith of Watch It Played. I think it was him. I may be misattributing this, but I think he would be fine with me attributing it to him. just because that's how he seems to be. But
Yeah.
when he went to board game conventions, he kept waiting to play the perfect game. And he had his roommate, and he's like, oh, well, I kept trying to do this, and I couldn't. He was telling his roommate, and the roommate there, housemate at the convention, said, oh, well, I just went and I played this, and this. He just played whatever came across his ambit.
Yeah.
And Rodney realized that he had done it wrong. Like, he was approaching the convention almost as work, looking for the perfect gaming experience of the magic game and getting to play it. And he missed all these other games. Which gets both to play should be about play, but also that it is about, sometimes it's settling.
It is
playing the game at hand versus the game, maybe the perfect game.
Right.
You know, the perfect game will happen irrespective of your wishes. It'll just, the perfect gaming moment will happen. Even with the bad game. In fact, I was watching a channel recently and the guy was like, this is a really bad game, but we have so much fun when we play it. I'm like, I love that. I love it.
That's awesome.
This is 5.8 on Board Game Geek, and this game just rocks our world. And we have no reason to explain it. But
and I mean, that's part of, again, I guess, trying to let go of our demand that the future conform to our wishes. I want to play the perfect game. Well, sometimes you're not going to play the perfect game, and
would you rather play a game, or would you rather just complain about not playing the perfect game? So I think it also gets into the Protestant work ethic, that he's kind of trying to resist that. And what better to resist the Protestant work ethic than play? That there's something that is absurdly non-productive, which is what play is. It's superfluous to anything that's useful in human life, except it's absolutely useful for human life. Where we get our deepest joys is moments of play, not from work. And so the more we can find ways to play, the more we are resisting being producers and consumers.
Right. We find our value ultimately in the gift of life, and not in our instrumentalization or functionality in some kind of larger machine.
Play is absolutely useless from an economic point of view, unless you're buying lots of board games. But if we just put that aside, play is useless in terms of productivity, which is why we should be looking to it. Because it reminds us of who we are. So play can be very countercultural.
He talks about, sometimes people will say, well, play and rest is necessary because it makes us better workers, which we've talked about on this podcast before.
It's a constant theme from this podcast. This is the point.
And I love that he brought that up. He said, the point of play and rest is not so you can be a more efficient worker. He says it's an end unto itself. And for me, I think one of the discussions I love around this, that he talks about this phrase, the atelic activity, which was a new word to me, atelic. I assume it's pronounced atelic, I'm not sure. But
I think I had atelic once. It was from a plane trip.
There was. I'm sorry.
Okay.
That was
got better.
Good.
I mean, this whole arm is bionic now. But it has a USB port. But I lost the arm, but it does have a USB port, which is very handy. So I have a lot of friends at the airport as they can charge their phones.
You're a very popular guy now.
A popular guy.
Yeah.
No, I'm
plug in a router too.
That.
You're walking Wi-Fi. But I guess it comes from there's this Greek word telos, meaning kind of like something's ultimate purpose, something's ultimate end, the end of it. And so when and so atelic means without purpose, without activity. And I'm kind of maybe connecting some dots that he doesn't necessarily connect. So maybe I'm putting words in his mouth, but he talks about the importance of atelic activities because like games, like play, because by definition, if they're without an ultimate future goal or purpose, then they're not in service to the future, right? They're all about the present, right? And that the gift, if it's true that the key to happiness and the key to experiencing grace and being present in life is to be present, like to right now, to not lose ourselves in the past or in the future, then that one of the best ways of doing that is engaging in these atelic activities like playing and games, because you're not trying to achieve some future goal that may or may not ever get here. And games and play are like brilliantly suited for that. And that's what games are all about. They ground us in the present.
Yes. Although I will add, I'll complexify that just a bit there, Ombre. Yeah. Weirdly, there is a future goal in a game you want to win. So there is a weird, but the truth of it is it's just a game, which is the beautiful bit of it, that who cares that you won Brass Birmingham? My aunt has no idea what that game is. Like, it's not that important. And at a certain level, hopefully we're aware of that. So you can enjoy completing something that is actually kind of strangely irrelevant.
Right,
it's
exactly.
Like, you wanted horseshoes. Good job, Daniel. Like, so you were trying to win and you won. Yeah. But it doesn't really matter because it's just a game, and now you're going to go eat dinner.
Right. The goal is so trivial, so unimportant, and so short, and so immediate. It's not like something you're like saving for 20 years from now. That it ultimately doesn't matter, right? Like, it's just kind of. I mean, it matters in that. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, it scratches our itch for purpose and goal-oriented activity. But it actually also keeps it a little meaningless too, because it's about little chits or a dice or something. I think it's genius.
I remember something that reminds me of Jane McGonigal when we talked about her book, Reality is Broken, about Broken. How games and play are so good at kind of giving us these little shots in the arm of purpose and meaning. Just it gives us a sense of purposeness and purpose and meaningfulness.
We're goal oriented, but it needs to be goals that are hopefully restoring us and not just making us into cogs of a machine.
And then that causes him to bring up Sir Rod Stewart. Are you a Rod Stewart fan, Kevin?
I can't say that I was, but I definitely remember him.
My friend Chelsea, a friend of this podcast, she's a big Rod Stewart fan. I hope.
Interesting.
I hope. Oh dear. I hope I didn't give away something. Chelsea, if you don't want me to share that, I'm sorry. Anyway, but she's a big Rod Stewart fan. But anyway, Rod Stewart. Oliver Burkeman talks about how he was so surprised to read this article that said that Rod Stewart is a huge model train enthusiast. And that when he goes on the road, he has a hotel room for himself and a hotel room for his model trains.
So funny.
And it's just and just how he loves that he's unapologetic for this for it. And he talks about this in terms of hobbies. And we often talk about board game love as a hobby. And he says this great line where he says a good hobby should feel a little embarrassing. Right. And I love that. I love because the world will always say, this is unimportant. Why are you wasting your time? Right. And that's the point.
I mean, if Rod Stewart spent all his time obsessing over music and the career of Rod Stewart, how unhappy would he be? So, of course, someone whose job and vocation and work is music would have a totally different hobby.
Yeah.
To be a well-rounded person. That would just be weird if all you did was eat, sleep, drink, think, meditate on music. So you need something that's absolutely baffling to someone else. And I generally find people with hobbies and collections and obsessions really interesting. Because then you get to hear, I mean, there is this weird cut glass that evidently is mostly men collecting these vases of cut glass, and a guy showed me his collection. I didn't know anything about it, but just watching him geek out over stuff that I had zero interest in was so much fun. I mean, it needs to end at some point, but
interesting.
It's so weird what people will collect, and I like seeing their obsessions. It makes the world interesting and spicy. To appreciate that someone else and get them to talk about it and watch them geek out about something.
Yes, I'm sure you've had that experience.
I can see people
before.
doing it to me. They're like, tell me about this board game thing. And I can tell they're kind of like rolling their eyes, but they're actually interested. And I'm like, I know what you're doing. And I'm going to tell you about it.
Oh, we've probably all experienced that. You talk to someone about maybe like their job or whatever, and they're like, this is what I do or whatever, and this is fun. But then you say, oh, "Oh, and I hear you're into cut glass vases." And then they're like, "Oh yeah, this is amazing. I got to tell you about it." And you can see this light come on inside of them, right?
Yes.
That they don't get with talking about their job and their work and things like that. Yeah.
It's so awesome. Yeah, good hobbies should feel a little embarrassing. And yeah, but games and game collection is a little embarrassing. And we should be able to laugh at ourselves and not take it too seriously. That's part of the fun of all hobbies, but especially board games. It is just cardboard, really.
Yeah.
So
Isn't everything just cardboard in a metaphorical sense?
I know I am. I had to have a mole removed at the dermatologist, and it was just cardboard.
You know, you've been playing a lot of board games when
You absorb the cardboard into your skin. Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so we've got an end quote. You want to move to the end quote?
Sure. Well, yeah, I really love the end of the book. I thought it summarized it well. And he goes on to have an afterword and appendices and things, but this is kind of the end of the main body of the book. And I thought it summarized it well. He said, this is page 228. "The only definitive measure of what it means to have used your weeks well is not how many people you've helped or how much you've got done, but that working within the limits of your moment in history and or finite time and talents, you actually got around to doing and made life more luminous for the rest of us by doing whatever magnificent task or weird little thing it was that you came here for."
Yeah, I love how open that is.
Yeah.
How grounded that is to respecting and understanding people's weird little tasks or things. It's so appreciative of the variety of life.
Yeah.
And then not everyone is called to do the same thing.
When I first read that, I kind of got caught a little bit on, the measure is not how many people you've helped. Because I think in some ways, I might even say it is in a way. And I think that's certainly part of a lot of faith traditions. But then I think about Parker Palmer, for example, is a Quaker Christian theologian. And he says, he wanted to, when he grew up, he wanted to be the next Martin Luther King Jr. and Mother Teresa and just, and he realized that the more he tried to do that, the more he was just almost kind of doing violence, right, to the people around him, to himself, to his family, because he was trying to be somebody that he's not. And that ultimately he ended up helping more people, blessing more people, just by being authentically himself, right? And the things that, and I see that, and I think Oliver Burkeman gets around to that in the end of the quote, where he says, "In your doing your magnificent little task or your weird little thing, you make life more luminous for the rest of us." So it is ultimately, in a way, also a blessing. It's how we bless others,
absolutely.
too.
I agree that it's a little striking, maybe because we are taught in various capacities to help others. I think what he's trying to get there is we don't want to do it that we're instrumentalizing people. I know one thing famous quote from Dostoevsky is this certain character, and maybe the Brothers Karamazov, one of those, where this character says, I love humanity, but I hate people. If you remember that quote, that she's worried, she likes a crusade, she wants to help on a global scale, but she doesn't help the people that she meets. Yeah. So if you think of the Good Samaritan story, for example, he wasn't out to help anyone. He just saw someone in need and helped. So we help our neighbors, we help where we can, but we're not out to be the best helpers of the world.
Right.
Perhaps is what he's after. And even Jesus shows some of that in the Gospels, some frustration or moving on. His ministry was not one of helping the most people. Because he spent time with disciples. He goes to Jerusalem. He turns his back on the crowds. So he actually, interestingly, he was not an optimized human being, was he? In terms of productivity. Yeah. I mean, he curses a fig tree for just out of frustration. So he's a very real person. I love the cursing of the fig tree. The more I thought about it, I'm like, and you love that the Christian tradition preserved that too.
Yeah, right.
Just got mad at a tree. He cursed it. It's the closest Jesus came to throwing a shoe at the wall out of just frustration. A little, sometimes a little.
You fig tree.
Yeah. No one was hurt besides that. There's plenty of fig trees. It was fine.
There are plenty of fig trees. Yeah.
All right, Daniel, next week.
Yes. On our next show, We're welcoming a special guest. So excited to welcome Reverend Dr. Casey Sigmund. Reverend Dr. Casey Sigmund is a seminary professor at St. Paul School of Theology in Kansas City, Missouri. And she recently started a new center at the seminary called the Pause Play Center. It's for clergy renewal, and it's all geared toward helping clergy persons have a sense of renewal in their lives through play, through the gift of play. And so she's all about what this podcast is all about, the intersection of religion and spirituality and play and games. And so we're looking forward to welcoming Dr. Sigmund next time. It should be great to hear about her center and her work and her thoughts on theology and play and religion and games and spirituality and all of that.
Right. Yep, we are excited about that one. I remind folks to like us, so you can do that. Like me on Instagram.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you could
lead it. Instacat, all cats all the time. Instacat, Instagram, and the Facebook, and we got YouTube, and we got podcasts.
Yep.
And we got other stuff. Yeah.
If you feel so led to leave a review for us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, that really helps a lot too. It helps people find us. We'd appreciate that if you feel so led. It helps the algorithms point out our podcast to other people. So
if you see someone who looks like they're down and needs, a kind word, you should pause, help listen to them and help them identify the feelings they're feeling. And then once they've done that, say, friend, let me tell you about a podcast. Brother, this might lift your spirits. And you can talk about Board Game Faith. After you've helped them negotiate their feelings.
That's right.
That comes first, but second comes Board Game Faith.
That's right.
Bye, everyone.
That's right. Bye. Thanks so much.